Yeah. I told my squad we gon' make it out. One way or the other. Yeah. I had some hoop dreams, but no jumper like I'm Adam. My pen is too clean, so I had to stick with rapping. My life is hella deep, dog, you couldn't even fathom. My goals are like Twitter, you can see I'm staying at.
The what? You're holding on to too many things and it's not good for you. Why? When you try and take on everything, you lose sight of what actually matters. And how? How are you going to figure this out? How are you going to sort the problem out? Set yourself a priority. Make that the one thing that dictates everything else. Right, I'm done. Once upon a time, in what feels like a different life, I had a relatively high-pressure job. And in that job, I had a boss. And that boss used to basically call every single thing that day a top priority. This was a top priority, this was top priority, this was top priority. And it used to stress me out. And so one day, I asked him about it. And he said, well, that's just how it feels. And so I passed that on to you. Cheers, mate. Cheers. The thing is, he's not the only one. And honestly, I've written so many to-do lists that have just days worth of work on them. And that's stressful. The weight of all those responsibilities that you're giving yourself every single day starts to grate on you. At least for me it does. And what I find is that the more I pile on, the worse stuff gets. Stuff gets left behind, stuff gets ignored, stuff gets pushed back. It's really easy to push back the things you don't want to do if there's a big list of other stuff just lurking there. Interestingly enough, me and my friend James went camping the other day, and in the planning of it, I actually have a document of all the things that I wanted to take with me. We were going by train, we were going to be hiking. I thought it was a great idea for one of the things to be taken was a 4-man tent for 2 of us, which weighs about 11 kilos. I took some stuff out of it, it didn't quite weigh 11 kilos, but I would have died if I'd taken all of that. Because do you know what? I was dying with the stuff that I took. We took the usual stuff, we took the stuff that would help us be comfortable and survive, but we also took, or at least I also took, a book to read. When were we going to have a chance to read? I took a huge tarp with poles and guy wires, and it was heavy. I took a journal, I took a brass pen, a fountain pen, camping. And then I took the things that I feel like are kind of important to me and also kind of are the reason I'm making this video now. I took a camera, I took a lens, I took 4 batteries for that camera, I took the things that went along with it, I took a microphone, which I didn't even end up using, I took a drone. These things all weighed so heavy on me, these things all weighed me down so much that it made some points less enjoyable. I'm not saying we didn't have a good time, I'm not saying we weren't comfortable, but we would have been more comfortable with less. Less, but better. This isn't even going as far as minimalism, although I think the idea of a minimalist hiking setup and a minimalist business are both really good ideas. I think I've actually learned something about running a business from this hiking trip. Focusing on the essentials, but more importantly having one priority. Maybe that's each day. Maybe that's until you finish that thing. But realistically, it should be an overarching theme. Your priority in camping, in wild camping, in a hike that lasts multiple days, your priority is survival. That's something we don't get to experience in our day-to-day lives. That discomfort, that out of the ordinary. We don't scare ourselves enough. We don't do things that make us terrified. although wild camping maybe didn't make me terrified, it definitely put me outside my comfort zone. There are a couple of scary moments. There were definitely some moments where you questioned what you'd been doing to get yourself into that moment. When you've run out of water and it's a really hot day and you don't know where your next water's coming from, well, then your priorities were mixed up. The priorities that got you to that point weren't right. And the same can be said for starting a business, for being a freelancer. Along these lines, there are 2 books that I really recommend, 2 books that I'm currently rereading. One that I just finished is Essentialism, and one that I'm nearly all the way through is Company of One. These 2 books both focus on similar principles. The idea that you don't have to overreach. You don't have to have everything. By focusing on what's really important, you can live a much more fulfilling life and have a much better business with less. Less stress, less hassle, less people to deal with. Ultimately, probably less money, but less turnover of money. It doesn't necessarily mean you come away with less. I think these are really important things to think about when you're starting a business. And it comes from setting a priority. It comes from having one thing that defines everything else you do. I think that's why a lot of businesses that are successful have that built in from the start. A core message, one line that just tells you exactly what that company values. What these books do is they ask you to think about why you're doing certain things, why you accumulate tasks, why you accumulate objects in your life. And these are important questions to ask because often we take things on just because we don't want to say no, or we buy things because we just think that we need them without really making a sensible, educated decision. We just buy. For camping, for me, that meant bringing along the what ifs and the maybes. What if I need this? Or maybe I'll need that. When in reality, they probably wouldn't have mattered. What if I need to use the drone? Well, I didn't. I forced myself to use it because I didn't want to have carried it all that way and then not use it. And we accept these responsibilities into our lives without really questioning them. We do it because we're asked by people we like or people we just want to please. We don't even always like them. Yeah, I can think a lot of times when we don't actually like them. And sometimes those what-ifs pay off. Sometimes the times that you say yes to something that maybe you wouldn't have done if you'd really considered it, sometimes that pays off. But just because it pays off doesn't mean you should have done it. There's a trap that we get ourselves into where just because we succeed at something, we think we should pursue it. I've fallen down this hole so many times in my life. I worked as a pastry chef for a year and I nearly set up a business doing that because I was good at it, even though I didn't really enjoy it. Looking back on that, that baffles me now. But I did that, all because someone said, "Do you mind baking cakes today?" And then, after I'd done it one day, they said, "You were alright at that. Why don't you do this for a couple of weeks until we find someone else?" Yeah, sure, I'll do it. That's a year of my life. Because someone asked me to do something and I didn't really consider why I was saying yes.
We gon' make it out. I would never fall, you can't take me out. I'm popping like a zit, I'm breaking out. And I am hella lit, you want a couch.
We find saying the word no so difficult out loud. We find directly saying no to someone just almost impossible sometimes. But what Greg McKeown says in Essentialism is that we're saying no constantly anyway, just not out loud. When you choose to do something, you are choosing not to do those other things. And that's a big deal. And if you start to think about things in those terms, you'll start to realize that, well, maybe I should say no to this, writing this email, because it's not important. No one's going to care. And maybe I should say yes to going and doing this other thing that's actually going to have some real meaningful difference. In your rucksack, when you go camping, by putting in the drone, you're taking away 500 ml of water because they weigh the same. That space is taken up by something that you kind of think you might need versus something that you definitely will need. So I'm not sure I have an answer for what less but better means to me. Only that it's becoming the priority, the thing that I live by, the thing that defines all the other stuff. And that's not going to be easy. That's not going to be an overnight thing. This is the kind of commitment that means I'm going to have to say no to things. Say no to probably good opportunities, because I need to focus on the great opportunities. And I think if you shift your mindset and you really realize that this is the right thing for you as well, it could really change your life. It could really change the way that you run your business, or just, going for a hike. It's important to reflect. It's important to have a priority. And for me, I think at the moment, that is less but better.